Welcome everybody to the After Dark Show. I'm Don Rogers. Before we get started tonight, I just want to take a second. I was just talking to my guest about this, and it's a very important day here in the After Dark Show family and even in our household. Our young lad has finished what he referred to as his anthropological study of the North American teenager. He's actually come online just about the same time I did, and he realized, what the educational system is all about, but he wanted to complete what he had started. So he actually started to look at high school as an anthropological study. So William right now is actually at school about to graduate grade 12. So with that, I want to say this is something I was never able to accomplish myself. And I'm very proud of you, young man. You have no idea what this means to see somebody go beyond what I did. And I know we all know about the education system, and I'm not going to poop on it because he has taken the bull by the horns, finished something, completed something that I was never able to do. And I am a very, very proud dad right now. So I just kind of needed to have that dad moment. And William, you did awesome, bud. Now, with all that being said, joining me tonight for the second time, and you guys might remember him from the first episode I did with him. He is my main man that lives in the van with the plan for No Division. He is one of my absolute favorite people to talk to about this community that we in the spiritual, metaphysical, anarchy, whichever facet of the outside of the regular that you fit into are all trying to develop. And his name is Andrew Lordson, and he is just come up with some amazing conversation topics and ideas about how to structure community, how to help each other. And we're going to get into a lot of that tonight. And I want to thank him for coming back. So big, big daddy Drew, Andrew, thank you for coming back, my friend.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. Congratulations to William. I can already tell he's, got his head right on his shoulders, you know, purposely undertaking that endeavor and even understanding it as a social sort of anthropological exercise. That's really awesome of you. So congratulations to you, William. And then thank you, Don, for having me. Um, Community is something that we all talk about in, I loved how you framed it, the metaphysical, anarchist, spiritual. There's not like one good word for it. It's something we all talk about, but we don't talk about what it means in practice. It's always sort of a theoretical conversation or a conversation around desire. And so I just wanted to give an example of how what we're doing right here has been of community to me and of really value to me. Earlier this week, when you reached out to confirm this chat, I had expressed to you that I had been in a melancholic funk and just being a little vulnerable, and having this chat on the calendar and having it to look forward to, it provided a spark and a motivation for me to sort of try and get out of the funk and get back into the groove of the mission. And that's, to me, that's community, just having fraternity and commitment to participation and activism. So thank you for sort of helping me crawl out of a little bit of a hole.
And I think that's a wonderful split space to start out in this. And I do have my list of questions as per usual, but you've brought something up, and it's something I do try to do from time to time when I see people in the community or friends on my social media or whomever, even if somebody reaches out, is basically like a hey bro, are you okay? Right? Because a lot of us are stuck in this workaday world and we don't have time to really pay attention to each other. And I know it's designed this way. It's all part of the social construct that we don't even have time to give a shit about each other anymore. But it really does mean something when you're having those melancholy days, or, you're just feeling a little off and somebody's like, hey, bud, are you all right? You need that reassurance that you're not in this alone. Like me, I live with two other people, but yourself, being the main man in the van, it has to have those moments of like, I'm in this alone, and you're really not. And there are people that give a shit. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but like I often see your posts and I've even sent you a message or two of like, yeah, all right, because it really is something important to put the human back in humanity because we don't do that. Right? You think about your parents and grandparents, the way they interacted socially, not social media, socially. They were on the phone with each other, they called each other, they stopped by, they went to sales, they went to markets, whatever it may be. There was more interaction where they were actually checking in. And that's something that is not a mainstay in modern society is giving a shit about each other and whether or not we're all right. And I think that's one of the things that's fundamentally missing from society and especially these smaller communities.
You're completely correct. I think as we move forward, we're going to start returning to a lot of the things that our grandparents did. There was, there's always value in the growth of society and whatnot, but we often tend to go a little too far, and then we got to pull it back a little bit. And in some ways, I think we are going to pull it back a little bit. And we were talking off air right before the show. You're authentic and you're real and you're actually being about it instead of just talking about it. And I love that you had mentioned, some projects you want to bring people on board with, and that's a big thing too, is collaboration, working together. Another thing that we all talk about, but I don't really see a lot of actual effort and progress on. And so I think hopefully moving forward, there will be more collaboration, and more people. You talked about haters and how hater energy can really throw a project off. We just got to get rid of all the hater energy and just bring in the collaborative energy.
Oh, absolutely. And for those who missed last week's show, I actually touched on this with Matt Morney and Drew and I were talking about this before is like, not everybody on your social media friends list or even people you've known your entire life is wishing you well. And all of that energy is in the reality. And if you have somebody constantly hating on you because you're doing something you love, it may negatively affect you. It may subconsciously even derail the progress you're trying to make because you pick up that vibe. Like when you tell somebody that, oh, I'm going to build a chicken coop, and they're like, oh, and just deadpan you. And it's like, wow, well, fuck me then. Right. And that's kind of the feeling you get like, wow, okay, sorry that me trying to have substantial eggs for my family for the next little while is offensive to you. But there's really people that will just kind of crap on the smallest of dreams and try to keep you small. And none of us in this community with these big ideas that want to do this are small. We're just kept small. And that's one of the biggest problems that I'm noticing is the psychosomatic response that people are having. Like they're stuck in that small mindset because of being browbeaten by society. Right. And that's one of the things that I really think is important that people need to look at ways of how to get out of that mindset is like, it really doesn't matter what other people think. It matters that when you're doing something and creating that it feels right to you.
Yeah, we gatekeep each other, or other people. I look at things often through the lens of a working class. You're a working class guy. I'm a working class guy, and I like the idea of working class spirituality. I think that really aligns with nature and the planet and sort of existence. Um, we gatekeep each other, but then we gatekeep ourselves, and we have these limiting beliefs that are somewhat installed from these bad interactions we have with the people with negative energy. But then also, we install them ourselves. And for me personally, this week, this melancholic funk I've been asking myself, what limiting beliefs do I have and how am I holding myself back? And I realized I'm holding myself back in a lot of ways still, and I need to overcome that. And one thing that I have found tremendous value in is, even at this point, when I thought we were done sort of cutting, connections, we still have to continue to cut connections. And it sucks because, for a lot of us, we only have just a few connections left. And so I've, letting people go has helped. But that just makes space. There is so much space for the future. And I know that we just got to get through these next few weeks and months, and while also still living in the present. It's so hard. It's so hard.
it you just hit a huge subject that's been going on here in our house is like Kyla and I are seeing this even in ourselves, like, even within the community that we're a part of now in this and, in our own personal lives with people that are getting it. There's still some that you're coming across that you thought were on the same path. They're right beside you, and then you're like, "Oh shit, you're gone too." Right? Because they're just falling away. And it's like you seem like you're on the same path, and it's like, no, but I believe this. And it's like, oh, okay, so you're way over there, and I'm still gonna go on this straight line. So I'll see you later. Like, and I mean, I'm having people that I've known my entire life that I thought understood me on a fundamental level, right? That have known me since childhood. And it's like, yeah, okay, I've always been kind of the weird kid, and now I've really started to understand this stuff. It just is striking when you have these people, I be it new in the community or like I said, a lifelong friend, where it's like, shit, I thought you were gonna make it. And it's not that they'll never get to the point of understanding what's going on. They're just not coming with us right now. And it kind of rips your heart out for a second. You're like, fuck, I thought you had it. Right. And you're just like, oh, you're gone. Okay. Well, I'll catch you later when you catch up to me over here. But that hurts. That makes you feel lonely. And it's striking and shocking sometimes, the real ones that aren't getting it. Right? It's stunning.
It is, and I thought we were done. I think we're done now, though. Knock on wood. I say that.
Yeah.
I do think we're going to start building. I've got some notes here. I wanted to talk about some stuff, but I kind of got a little discombobulated.
Yeah.
Shoot, I had a thought and I lost it. I'm so sorry.
No,
Maybe
no
we
worries.
can jump into some questions.
I'm gonna throw this up because there's Drew's channel. You guys can see it. So I'll just start with a baseline question here then is, what does resistance through your way of being actually look like to you? Like, the topic I think is wonderful, but I just want to give people a baseline of the title of the show. Like, what does that mean in essence?
Yes. So I think I had said this expression, this term on the last show we did. I want to expand on it a little bit. But it's complicity reduction. So baseline is sort of understanding ways in which you are currently perpetuating the toxic paradigm that we live in, because we're all guilty still. We're all still complicit. And so, like, an easy example is, what corporations are you still giving money to? How much are you giving the government in the form of taxes? Just trying to be very subtle there, right? But the more that you buy from corporations, the more the taxes that you pay, the more you're just part of the problem. And then it becomes even deeper. Okay, so maybe you're moving away from corporations, but are you now sourcing, for example, meat in a humane way? Because that's another thing that moving forward, as we talk about the new earth, that's sort of my big focus, the new earth, this mission that I think a lot of us are here on. It doesn't just stop at, okay, the government is bad, let's get rid of the government, but it's also, we're bad. So as we're moving through this experience, how are we reducing how bad we are? Because killing animals, it's kind of bad, but I really like meat. Oh my gosh. And so there's that balance of living in alignment with nature. So animal husbandry is a term that I didn't even know about until a few years ago. And then I learned about it and I was like, oh my gosh, sort of the ethical, humane, and loving care for animals that are your livestock. And so, yes, ultimately, they're going to be dispatched for your sustenance. In the meantime, they should be treated with dignity, love, and respect. So it's not just the systemic level that we need to begin to divest from, but it's also the levels within us that are not full of love and light. And it's inevitable. So I say all of this, but I eat meat, so I'm guilty, and I understand that. So that's just sort of an example. But ultimately, if you have a program in your brain where you're consistently trying to divest from the current structures, I think that's sort of every day how you can incorporate resistance. Because resistance, as romantic as it sounds, isn't necessarily violent and aggressive. I mean, that idea sounds awesome to me, at least, like guillotines and guns and battle. Like, there's a part of me in my DNA that, yeah, does kind of long for battle in a sense. And when I see how much is wrong and how much evil is just going on, it's hard not to want to be angry. And so there is a romantic element to the violent sort of revolution idea, but I don't think that's maybe the best approach. That's not to say don't be prepared, but don't seek it out either. So, prepare for maybe some violence, have some guns on your little homestead and know how to use them, but don't go looking for trouble. I could be wrong, but I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, I completely agree. Like there will be some type of firearm, probably bows or whatever, but you hit on a couple of things. And as per usual, I'm speed writing my answers as I'm listening to you talk. And you hit on, how much tax did you pay? Well, you know, silly me trying to sustain for my family, I ended up paying over $800 in income tax for the last 2 weeks. And I'm going to put that into fucking scope for everybody. My rent is $1,300. I just paid over $800 in income tax. That's more than 2/3 of my fucking rent. That's insane. It, I I don't remember the government being with me in my septic truck while I was sucking shit and cleaning toilets. I certainly didn't see anybody in a suit with me, but holy fuck, did they take a big chunk of my money. So no, I get that. And the fact that I'm feeding those fucks their rich little lives pisses me off every time I open that pay stub. Um, and I want to hit on the programming thing too, is breaking the reliance program, because we are programmed to rely on big daddy government, right? Like, and that's where the modern convenience has come in, because they're even trying to make us more and more complacent to be more and more reliant on them. Like, oh, the most modern technology. And this actually goes back to, I would say, the boomer generation or the one before it, that were like the ones coming out with all the modern conveniences of home, the ones that sold the family farm and moved to the city. That's where it started. That's where this complacency and reliance on government and technology actually, in my opinion, really kicked off, is the sellout generation. I'll just call it what I see it as, right? Not all of them did it, but my family did it on both sides. They both sold the family farm and fucked the next few generations over. They screwed us, right? They took the easy way out and left us sitting there. Like, you listen to your grandparents say, back at your age, was 22 years old. I had a 50-acre fucking farm. Yeah, and you sold it, you little bitch, because and you got that money from the generation before you, generation before that, generation before that. It was a hand-me-down system, and they cashed in and cashed us out, right? That is one of the fundamental flaws with anybody who sits there and says, oh, back in my generation. Well, your generation sold this one out, right? And I'm not hating on any generation, but that is just my personal opinion from my own experiences in my life, that a few generations ago, y'all fucked up and you fucked us, right? That's why housing costs are 3 times the average income in North America. That's why nobody my age or Drew's age or my son's age can ever afford to buy a house just with a workaday job. You need some type of investment, inheritance, windfall, or something to get out of this. Because if you're trying to do this from the ground up, it is damn near impossible, right? Especially when you've had a lifetime of debt gathering with you, just trying to like achieve any type. We have thousands of dollars in credit card debt just from living in Ontario trying to survive, right? It wasn't that we were lazy, we were both working, but we still couldn't even afford to live. right? That is the sick part of this system is they make you accrue debt to stay in the system that you are now reliant on. And it is so fucking gross. Sorry, I got a little triggered on that one.
No, you're entirely correct. It's each generation has its own failings, but it does feel like maybe the boomers or whatnot, they really fucked us. And so hopefully, as a lot of them are on their deathbeds, hopefully they realize how much they fucked us and they help us. Like they turn around and help us. That's my hope. My family also sold the family farm, which sucks because like what I would give right now to have that little piece of property. Oh man. You said something else though that I wanted to go on, and I totally friggin' forgot it. What have you thought about? Opening your own septic system company, and have you ever thought of working in a cash capacity, or is there something else you can do in a cash capacity?
I, like you, have a history in construction. I was actually an independent contractor for many years, and this new end of septic, once I can establish some type of financial backing, it's actually something Kyle and I have looked into. I was going to build fancy outhouses because there is a lot of old money still in this area. So I get myself a septic truck, I get the contract to build the porta potty, and then I get the service route. So I basically run the whole shit show, right? Like it's from beginning to end, you owe me money, right? And that's I heard this a while ago and I absolutely agree with it. Poor people use money to survive. Wealthy people use money to buy the next thing with credit. Rich people make their money make money. And that's what I'm gearing towards is making my money make money.
I love that idea, and I love the pun that you threw in there, the whole shit show pun. And that's actually a good business model. You find an area with rich older people that have money that want sort of bougie, experiences and services, and you help them out and you charge them a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Um, I did want to get on the predication of meat as well, because that's something like we actually have a local butcher that's like 10 minutes down the road. So that takes away the nasty grocery store meat. And I've had a couple of fairly long talks with the owner operator, and they seem like fairly decent people. So I'm assuming the animals are dealt with in a humane way. But it is a very strange existence where like we actually have to predicate off of another being. And I was beginning to have a very hard time with this. And then I was talking to another guest and they were explaining like in a spiritual sense, through the cycles of reality, you're the blade of grass, you're the dung beetle, you're the worm, you're the cow, you're the cat, you're the dog, you're whatever. And you come into this existence willing to serve that purpose, right? And I absolutely agree. And on our farm, the animals will be treated with the utmost respect. But I believe that even the beings, cows included, that come into this existence by choice to help our cause. I believe there's certain like I know if I had the choice and it's like, oh, there's a starving farmer, I'll go be a cow this time and come back to this existence and be a cow, right? And I get to be like walking around eating grass, mooing for about 3 years, and then I've served my purpose, and that was my purpose of that existence. And I believe that there are certain animals that do come into this existence, plants as well, because everything has some type of sensation. I believe it's all inter intertwined in a way that some of them choose to be here, just like some of us chose to be here. And some of them chose to be what we need to sustain ourselves. And that actually put my mind at a lot of peace. Was like, okay, as long as I'm buying it, and I'm very respectful with my food, I thank it, I thank my water, I thank everything. And it might be weird hippie bullshit to some people, but I thank everything I eat. It's not a blessing, it's not a prayer, it's not grace, it's none of that. It's like, just thank you. I'm thankful I have a thing of clean water. I'm thankful I have clean grass-fed meat in my fridge, right? I that's what I'm thankful for, and I thank it every time I consume it. And I think that's part of the exchange that you have to give back to this reality.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's tough to say, but I feel like everything's connected, non duality, whatever the substrate of our universe and consciousness is, ultimately it's all connected. And so, even though it seems like we're divided by this line of me eating you, it's actually the universe eating itself through me. That's not to justify anything. Like, I still believe good and evil exist. So I'm not trying to get weird. I know some people will use those spiritual esoteric concepts to justify doing bad things. And, some people, vegetarians, would say that's exactly what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to redirect here, though.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I apologize. I'm really not in the zone tonight. I apologize, everyone in the chat. It's been a tough week. But, this is where I was thinking. Theoretically, you would think if we've made it to the point where we get to be humans, we've already done our services and our cycles, our duties of being a blade of grass and of being a chicken and a cow. And this is the next step. And the goal, one would think, is, okay, let's be the best human I can be so I can get to the next step. This stuff, to me, it's an innate sort of knowledge, a gnosis of sorts. But I often try to think in more material terms, and all of this sounds crazy. But that's why I'm not a materialist at heart. But I do try to look at things through other lenses as well, to not just be close-minded, and to just not think that I have all the answers, because I definitely don't have all the answers. I have way more questions.
No, and I definitely agree. I do think like we've reached one of the higher inclinations that we can have as humans, and there is something higher. I completely agree that there is something higher that we're meant to become, and I don't know if that's almost Buddhist, Zen, or whatever, where we can be at peace with everything around us and be self-sustaining. I don't really know what that looks like, but I think that's where we're heading. And it's like-minded individuals like you and I and Steven from BG Cast, and there's several others that I'm fairly close with that I really do think are on the same wavelength and heading the same direction. And it's going to look exactly like what we're talking about. It's going to be a next level of existence where not Little House on the Prairie type thing, but definitely more self-sustaining and outside of the construct of society, I guess you would say.
That's the new Earth.
Yeah. Um, I do want to ask, how would you describe a day in the life of somebody quietly building alternatives rather than fighting the system head on?
Yeah. So the first thing is structure. I think a lot of people might be afraid of that word, but I do believe there's value in structure, structure and routine. And you can also think about it as the various subconscious programs that you install within your life. So you're not having to ask yourself, what am I doing today? Not being lost. So the first thing is like a structure. Embedded within that is that idea of sort of what we had talked about earlier, constantly and consistently trying to withdraw from the system. And so for me personally, the structure looks like I need to be better, like self-care. That's something that I have a little bit of a structure on, but I need to get better at. And because the better I can take care of myself, the better I can contribute to my community. And so self-improvement, but the goal with anything though is to find sort of the balance of the middle path, as they say. And so don't beat yourself up trying to be perfect. Just try to be a little bit better. And then once you have integrated a good structure to your life and you're taking care of yourself well, you got to think about your family. and improving your family and how you can do that. And then once that's taken care of, you want to just branch out a little bit further and think about your community, your broader community. It can be so easy to get lost in the national or global news. Oh my gosh, apparently there's a new bug going around, something Hanta, something or other. I honestly don't even give a shit. Not at all. And so it can be so easy to get lost in the big global picture, but in reality, there is more than enough work to keep you busy just thinking about yourself, your family, and your community. And so, um, some questions that sort of I ask myself that I would encourage other people to ask them is, what is your positive vision for yourself and your family and your community? And so this idea, yeah, that's just something I ask myself. What is my positive vision for myself? And for me, it's just trying to be more consistent, be more disciplined, be an example for other people. That's a big thing. Because this is so stupid to say. It's stupid to say, but I just have to say it. When you have a beard, people think that you are just wise and that you're like masculine. I'm not saying I'm not masculine, but there's a certain thing that people project onto you. And so it creates this demand for me to live up to that projection. And, it's a cool projection. So, I'm going to try to live up to it. If it was a stupid projection, I wouldn't maybe try to live up to it. And so that's what, for me, my daily life looks like. It's just trying to refine my structure, to refine myself so I can someday maybe actually be able to contribute to my community. But then I'm also just always trying to learn something new every day. Even if it's just a word, my dang word of the day.
Yeah. I do want to Lee is my buddy. Lee is my miracle friend. I don't know if you've heard this story, but he actually had a double lung transplant and they offered him the MAID program several times here in Canada. Thank you. Right. But he was supposed to be in a coma for like a month and he was awake after that day, which shocked the hell out of me, his wife, and the rest of his family. But he actually put something up here, and I love this phrase, the weapons of mass distraction, because that's basically what a lot of this shit that you get on the news and in your feeds and social media, that's all this is just distractions to stop you from doing exactly what me and Drew are talking about here, being able to focus on the small individual steps of getting your family to a different level or being able to even help yourself, right? And that's one thing that I'm going to actually touch on this on next week's show, but I want to bring it up here as well, is the ability to start small, because a lot of people don't understand that we're not all on the same page. We're not, you know, when you read a lot of metaphysical books or spiritual books or even anarchists, whatever, it's like, go out and be empowered and go do this right now and quit your job and do. A lot of us can't. And a lot of us need to just be able to start small. And it's observing your own small victories that'll allow you to keep going and getting further and further ahead. That's my belief on it anyway, is that you do have to do the little things like what you're talking about, is just a little push forward for your family, a little push forward for yourself. You don't have to change your life fundamentally just because you understand that society is crooked. Sometimes you just have to do it in little baby steps because it's all you can afford, because you still have to survive in this fixed reality.
So very true. So very true. Because so many of us are so broke right now. It's like, I just, I hope, I hope I know that a miracle where a lot of us are going to be blessed with miracles to sort of help us. But when so many people are so broke, that it really makes it tough, especially, earlier I had mentioned gatekeeping and how we hold each other back. and how people don't collaborate. Here's a random, but not so random, experience I've had over the last 10 years, with housing. Um, there will be people who will like rent a house for, let's say, $2,000 with 4 bedrooms, and then they'll rent out each bedroom for $1,000, and then they'll start netting profit. And so they're rent seeking is the economic term, and it fucks everyone. But we in the working class do it to each other. And so instead of, 3 working class or 4 working class guys living together, splitting the bills, there's 3 guys paying all of the rent and 1 guy not paying any rent. And in my early 20s, it wasn't like that. In my early 20s, all the guys would get together and they'd say, okay, here's how much rent is. I get the big bedroom with the bathroom, so I'm going to pay a little more. And it was all fair, and guys worked together, and there would group barbecues and fraternity, and we'd play video games. And then, so that was my early 20s. And now that I'm in my late 30s, my last 10 years have been a different experience where it's people don't know what the rent is for the house, but they know what they pay, and people pay different amounts for different rooms, and everybody knows that one person doesn't pay anything. And then there's not a lot of group activity. There's not a lot of, house projects. It's really felt like the working class has just started turning on each other. And so that was part of my inspiration for the No Division, the merchandise. And then also, actually I rebranded. So the first time I was on your show, Heavyweights Life Feels, that was an old project. But I've just been so consumed by the division of even the working class. And so that's another thing when I talk about collaboration and whatnot. It's, and we're talking about complicity. If you're doing something like that, you're making the problem worse. So, that's just a random thought I had. It kind of popped up. We were talking about being broke. If you're not broke, go help someone who is broke. If you're blessed to have resources, just start helping people, because that's what we need right now. Even if you don't have resources, but maybe you have time, just go out into your community and do something. Go clean up a park. I live in Seattle, and the parks here are filthy. Well, in the nice neighborhoods, they're not bad, because there are still nice neighborhoods in Seattle, but the city's mostly just bad. I'm rambling. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to get that off my chest.
No, that's what this is all about. It's conversation, not a television show. I absolutely agree that a lot of things in this society definitely, and it is in the working class too, because they foster that mentality of dog eat dog. Like everybody is out to get everybody. Like I want the extra 2 hours because I need I need the new thing. And they've turned everybody against everybody, and it's a sick fucking trap. And I've said it before on my show, is like it's really hard to build a community when you're stuck in society. And that was the game plan from the get-go, was to get us so involved in the societal construct that you forget about what a community looks like, because you're too busy on your phone, or you're too busy with your job, or you're too busy with your second job, or your mortgage, or your car payments, or whatever, to focus on anything else. Right? Like Lee said, the weapons of mass distraction. And it really is everything that we're talking about, because we weren't meant to live in large society. My personal opinion, I know, I don't think we were meant to live in societies. I think we were meant to live in small, tight knit, bartering communities with energy exchanges and such. And I really do think that's where this system is fundamentally flawed. And I absolutely think it's intentional. It's done by those, whomever think they were in charge. But it really is a fucked up system that a lot of people have bought into. And it's the ones with their heads down on their phone all the time that will never look up and see what's going on around them. And it's scary. Like I drive in a major city almost every day for my job, and like I've almost run people over with a 2-ton septic truck because they can't be bothered to look up from their phone across the street. And it's like, Do you realize you die if I hit you? Like, you will die. My truck weighs 2 tons. You will die. You will, and that'll be the end of you. Was that text really worth it? And I'm ranting, but holy shit. Uh, I do have a couple of things. Joy Child, who's an author that I've had on a couple of times, she watches my show on her TV, but she'll text me during, and she always has some golden wisdom to throw in here. And she's been watching the whole time. So I'm just going to read off some of what she's been writing. Gratitude from the heart is all connected, getting back to purity. You're talking about in our natural state of being, we are all the divine spark. And then the last thing she just sent me is, we are not broke. Our budget just needs to expand. And it's something that young Master William, who is off graduating, has actually learned. I used to have a terrible relationship with money, right? It's almost like hexing yourself. I always said the words, I've always been broke. Right? Because my childhood, we grew up in poverty. My parents were not good with money, which taught me not to be good with money, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to get into the blame, shame, and whatever game. But I changed what I said, and it has changed everything in the last year. I stopped saying I've always been broke and switched it to I used to be broke. And now when money issues come up, I will literally say, fuck it, I'll get more. And more shows up. And William has adapted the fuck it, I'll get more. He doesn't say fuck it in front of me because it's funny. He's 18 years old, but still like catches himself swearing like, right. But he'll be like, so is the screw it, I'll get more why I got a full-time job on the day I graduated? Yes, it absolutely is. You had faith in something and so did the universe. Here's your diploma. Here's your paycheck, right? It literally happened for him like that because he believed he deserved it, right? And I do think that has a lot to do with it as well, is like, you have to have faith in what you're doing so the universe has faith in you, right? If you're telling yourself I'm abundant but you're living in poverty, that's a hard one. But if you actually believe that you can have a healthy relationship with money, you can develop one. I didn't just snap my fingers, and like I said, we're still several $1,000s in debt. Don't think I've got everything figured out, but we're okay right now. We're not having to like have the phone out to go grocery shopping anymore to make sure we have enough for that extra jug of milk because that might break us. We're not there anymore. And we were there a year and a half ago. And it was just a change in the way I perceived what was going on. And I think that shift is the positive shift into I can, and I believe in myself. So the universe will believe in me. And it might be woo woo to some people, but this has been working for me. And that's what I would offer to people is, try to look at your relationship with everything that seems to be an issue and see how you can change it.
No, I appreciate that. I have two things I want to say. Lee, I saw your comment. I just want to say I'm glad that you're here. It is fucking disgusting what Canada is doing. Just fucking disgusting. Yeah. So I'm glad that you're here and fuck Canada. I mean, like, you're cool, but like fuck Canada and what they're doing. And then earlier, in the show, I had mentioned limiting beliefs. I definitely still have limiting beliefs, particularly around money. And it's really, I'm thankful for this opportunity to overcome it because earlier, where you talked about building the fancy outhouses, I also have a vision, where I want to be providing services to rich people. And I need to believe that I deserve to be compensated adequately, and rich people can afford to pay. So at this point in my life, that's what I'm really just trying to work through, so I can manifest and build in 5 years when I'm, bidding a job to not go low because, I'm desperate, but to go high because I deserve it. And so this conversation has been really good in helping me just sort of, verbalize that issue that I have, and also too fraternity. Real quick side note: last year I tried to put together a men's group, like a monthly men's group where, guys like you and myself, and we could all get together. And it didn't work, but I'm okay with failure, and I still tried, and so I'm thankful for that. But even just having you in my life has been this gift of fraternity that I've missed, and that I want to cultivate more of. And that's another thing for if there's men out there struggling, I'd ask, what sort of fraternity, what kind of bros do you have in your life? Because, maybe you need to go find some bros. You definitely need some bros. If you don't have bros, you need bros.
Absolutely. And speaking of the family aspect of this community, as I told you earlier, Joy Child is texting me, and she's actually, we'll talk about this off air, about getting you a copy of her book and getting an email conversation going with you, because she's very interested in what we're talking about and would like to basically brainstorm with you as well, because she's on this community kick as well. And I I I foresee a very large community, not large community, a good group of friends developing something big in the next few years, and it's going to happen quickly. And I think everybody that wants to be is going to be a part of it. And I think we're all energetically drawn towards each other, because I'm finding people I never would have expected to find, and connecting with them in ways that I didn't think would ever happen, because it's just like, holy crap, you're a completely different person than what I saw on a show. And like, oh wow, you make a lot more sense. Like when I first saw you on Steven's show, I was like, okay, cool. He works out. I used to work out. I like that guy. Right. And that's when I started checking out your channel. I was like, holy shit, he's talking about a lot of the same things I've been thinking. And looking past the idea of heavyweight light feels into community is what made this conversation happen, because I was like, okay, yeah, cool. He's a gym guy. I like that. I used to be a gym guy, but we've developed a much more advanced friendship than I ever saw coming. And I absolutely love it. And that's happened to me several times in this short period that I've been doing this show. And I feel I know I'm just repeating myself now, but I feel like we're pulling together, and I feel like it's coming to some type of culmination very, very soon.
I feel it too, just this like it's on the horizon. And so it's so frustrating to be, we were talking before the show about like going through the day to day when something is just on the horizon. Oh, it's like the most frustrating feeling, but then also there's a lesson in there. There's always a lesson in everything. The lesson is to just not forget to live for today, to live in the present. So it's so hard because it's like, I don't want to live today because I want to live in 3 months from now, but there's still so much joy and beauty. For example, real quick, at this point, I'm just rambling. This has been more of a therapy session. Thank you very much. But today, I was just beat up. I've been doing a lot of heavy manual labor this week. One of the jobs I was on had some of the most fantastic smelling flowers. It was almost intoxicating. And I had this moment where I literally just had to stop working and just go spend a few minutes just inhaling the scent. And then it hit me. It's like, you had this moment today because in 5 years, when you have your land and it's paid off, you're going to plant some of these flowers and they're going to be in your yard. And so that lesson of just thinking, yes, I know the future is going to be bright, but today has value too. It was really beautiful. They're so beautiful. I don't know what they're called yet because I'm going back to the job next week. I'm going to do the Google search thing and figure out what they are. But they smelled so good. Oh my gosh, so just don't forget to live today as well.
Absolutely. And I don't know if this is going to show up on screen, but I had to go switch trucks this morning, and this was my friend. He came literally within 5 feet of me, a little tiny bunny, while I was in a truck yard with a lopped off ear, came up to me and wanted to be my friend. Right. So It's exactly that. It's observing the small miracles of this reality while they're happening to us, like a beautiful fragrance, like the appreciation of the small bunny, like a bird singing while you're working. It really does change. Now, unfortunately, in my job, I don't often get fancy smells, but like
I know yours is the opposite.
I get to see some of the most amazing scenery, including small bunnies. It's just looking up from what you're doing and appreciation of what's going on around you is another thing that we've been programmed out of doing. And it's something that we're missing. And we really need to get back to being the observer in this reality instead of being the puppet, because that's what a lot of us have become, is the puppet.
That is so true. And there are times in my life where it feels like I'm in a movie where things are cinematic and the way the wind is hitting me, and where I'm like not disassociated, but I don't feel connected to my body. It's so rare, but I have these moments and they're so brief. And then as soon as I recognize that I'm in one of those moments, it goes away because I change. I change from like the observer to the puppet instead of just allowing myself to be the observer. Ugh, but they're so cool. So cool.
Yeah. Oh, I when I go into Calgary, it's weird. It's like watching a bizarre television show that I'm not a part of, and it's like, what am I doing here? Like, who are these? And like some of them are just on. Lee and I actually talked about this a lot. He has a lot of medical appointments with his issues, and he's like, he still calls me Donnie. He's like, Donnie, I'll go to these appointments and it's the same people doing the same things every week when I get there. And he realizes, like, of course, he's at a medical appointment, but he's talking about driving down the street. He'll see the same person that was walking by on the street. Like the last time he was going to the appointment, it's going to go do the same thing. And it's like, holy shit, we are just in a systematic rut, and we've been spoon fed this, and we're not looking at what's going on around us, and we really need to, because you'll see some amazing shit, and you'll also see some crazy shit with the corruption and stuff that's going on around us. It Look up, look around, and observe, and you'll see a lot more of what's being done to you and what could be done for you.
And that's why so many of us on these awakening paths have these, sort of life shattering experiences, and we go into these existential holes because there's a meme. Can't quote it, not at all, but it pretty much outlines the idea that if you truly just look at what is going on, and you don't lose your sanity a little bit for a little bit, then you're probably not human, because it's extraordinarily sad. And I don't want to turn negative, and we won't turn negative, but we can acknowledge the evil that is permeating the planet while not letting it consume us. And I at times I'll have a little cry. I'll just be like, okay, this is a good time to just have a little cry, and I'll do it, and it's nice. I'll lean into it. For example, I'm in a Safeway parking lot right now, and you wanted to talk about mutual aid a little bit, so I'll like segue and tell this story. I've been living in this minivan for like 2.5 years, and I've been coming to the Safeway for about the last year and a half. I like routine, very much so. And so over the last year and a half, I've watched this homeless gentleman who had a puppy grow into the puppy grow into an adult dog. And so finally, I worked up the courage to talk to him. And so I sat down and talked to him, and just had this moment, this human moment, got his name, his backstory a little bit. And then I told him, I'm my situation, that I live in a van, but I'm looking for, affordable housing. And that if I can find it, like a 2-bedroom place, that I'll help him out, like I'll pay for 6 months of his rent or something. And, I'll help him out because it's so hard to think about, me getting housing. Like I've been in this situation so long, I want to bring someone with me. I want to help, because what's the point in living if you can't help try and combat the evils? That there's just so much of it, and that's honestly one way to just try and compartmentalize it is by trying to help. Yeah, so not to go bummer on everyone, but if you haven't been out in your community and you have been struggling mentally, maybe go give back to your community, and you might get a boost in mental health. There'll be a little dip. In my experience, there's a little dip because you have to embody all of the sadness for a moment, but then there's a cathartic release that allows for a greater sort of fulfillment and joy and a release of some of that pain. Because things are fucked.
I totally agree, and I'll start where you did with the whole crying thing. It is cathartic, the cathartic. Like, Kyla will laugh at me. I'll deliberately watch movies that make me cry because it's like I don't know how to just cry, but it's like, fuck it, I'll watch a movie because I know I need to, and it gets me going like a little bitch, and it's like, yep, that feels better. That's all I needed. Thank you, Armageddon. Right. And I just told everybody so Kyla can no longer make fun of me. I cry like a little bitch every time I watch Armageddon, and Bruce Willis switches it up at the end. You motherfucker make me cry. But yeah, it every time it's like, yep, that's what I needed. I just needed to get that out, and then I'll move on. Right. But so there's a couple of things you were saying about wanting to help somebody, and I heard this quite some time ago, so I cannot possibly take credit for it, but there is a saying that, the only time you should be looking down at somebody is when you're offering them a hand up. And I truly have tried to embrace that as much as humanly possible. And that's the best advice I can give anybody is I've been homeless. I've lived in a dumpster when I was 16 years old. I've literally been to rock bottom. I was on drugs. I was drinking, blah, 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 blah. You have to start somewhere. You have to have faith in the fact that you're going to be okay. Right. And there's always somebody worse off because yeah, I was eating donuts out of the Tim Hortons garbage, and then I saw a guy eat a half-eaten piece of pizza out of the actual garbage, and I was like, "Well, fuck, I'm not that hungry," right? And, that's even when I was 16 years old, I saw the difference. It's like, okay, my life could be even worse. I could be the guy that just ate that slice of pizza out of the garbage and it had shit on it and ew, right? But you can always help somebody. Even when you're down, you can still help somebody. And even if it's a kind conversation like you and the guy with the dog, you've brought some type of awareness to that guy, and somebody gives a shit. And I've done this before in my job, and this isn't a brag, this is just kind of a share. I pack extra lunch when I know I'm going to Calgary, and oftentimes it's my wife's baking, and I'll give it to homeless people. And it's because I've been homeless literally, and I'll look at them and go, just know somebody gives a shit that you're alive. Here's a muffin, right? And that's all you can do that day, but you did something, right? That conversation might have meant something to that guy, right? That the idea that there's a probability that he could someday have a place for him and his dog might have gave him a little bit more to just keep going, push through, and make sure that him and that dog make it to the next day. So you might not even realize how you're helping people, but you always are. We do have a question from the audience, and this is one that I can relate to. Have you ever caught yourself self-sabotaging because you're programmed? I'll let you answer that first.
Yeah, I have made dumb decisions. I can, I won't get too specific, but I'll be like, in my brain, I'll say, it doesn't matter. Here's a good example. It doesn't matter that I do this because I'm not worthy of a girlfriend or a wife. So it doesn't matter that I do this. So that's me sort of self-sabotaging myself because of this programming that I have, that I'm not worthy of a partner. So yeah, I do absolutely, and that's one I'm working on right now that I'm trying to work through. So good question, guest.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I can say the same is like I have caught myself talking shit to myself. And this is something that I've figured out along my little journey here is like your subconscious constantly listens to you and it's basically how you program your own reality, right? If you keep saying my life sucks, guess what's going to happen? Your life's going to continue to suck, right? If you say like now I was explaining this, you can't lie to your subconscious either and be like getting food stamps and saying I'm abundant, your subconscious is going to go bullshit, right? Like no we're not, right? It knows too. But you can say I made this much money today and I'm able to provide this for myself and I'm doing well. And I've mentioned this a lot on the show is there was a time where it seemed like everything was going wrong for Kyla and I who just popped in. Um it it was bad and like I looked at her the one day and I had to find something because I was starting to get depressed and I had a job but everything was just going to hell and I was like at least the tires on the truck aren't flat because they're like $400 a piece. And I was like, at least they're not flat. Like, at least I can still get to work without having to spend more money. And that was it. And then she brought something up. And I was like, yeah, we do have food in the fridge. Yeah, the lights are still on. Yeah, the roof leaks in a couple of places, but we're dry, right? It's those smalls, and sometimes that's all you can do is build off of those smalls to get yourself into the mindset of I'm succeeding instead of self-sabotaging. Treat yourself to your successes, right? Like observe, we're talking about being the observer. Observe your own success, right? Observe the fact that you went to work today, busted your ass, and you know that paycheck's coming, right? It sucks that we're still paying an ass load of taxes, but we're getting enough to sustain right now, and more is coming. And that's all we can really do right now because I'm in the workaday world just like you. We have to have that mindset that we're trying, we have a dream, we have an idea, we're going towards it, and we're going to build it together, separately, as a group, as a collective, as a community, right? Like, there's not one person. Well, maybe there's a couple people that I've had on the show that I wouldn't invite to the homestead, but the large majority, I would absolutely have almost every guest that I've had on this show out to my house if they were ever in need of some realignment, like to realign themselves or needed help or needed to exchange a place to live for some type of energy. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. Like, you go back to the days where, like, people would go from town to town and, like, work for room and board. That was a good system too, because, like, the farmers needed an extra set of hands, and that person needed somewhere to eat and sleep for those 6 months. It Those things have fallen to the wayside too, and, like, they've been taken away from us. The ability to help each other like that has been taken away, and I don't think it's gone far. I just think we forgot the idea.
If if I ever need to hide from the American government, I'll hit you up because I'm not ruling it out. It's not my ideal 5 year plan, but I'm not ruling it out. Uncle Ted, as some people call him, he was right about a lot of things.
No, absolutely. So I'm gonna ask, how do you balance, since we're talking about land and communities and whatnot, how do you balance the desire to buy land and create intentional communities with the reality, like you and I currently, many people can't afford to do that.
Oh boy, um, this is funny coming from me, but I think not not calling anyone out, but I think some people just need to work a little harder. I do think we've become comfortable. And although the idea of like a 9 to 5 is stupid, um, you know, we have a mission that we came here to accomplish. And so it sucks that we have to work harder than, maybe other parts of our ancestors have. And it sucks that we don't get to enjoy nature as much as we could and should right now. But, we came here for the mission, this New Earth mission. When we signed up, we knew it was going to be work. And, I'm seeing a lot of themes for a lot of us in the community. And the last few years have kicked our butts. And a lot of us have had health issues. And a lot of us have just not been optimally that's all the comment, and so a lot of us haven't been, fully, living up to our potential. And so myself as well, you know, I live in a van, but I was able to scrape up 5 grand that I'm investing in my health. And so I'm dealing with some sleep apnea, postural jaw stuff, and that's, the big chunk of money. But I'm doing that because I'm thinking of the future, and I'm thinking of the land that I'm making payments on now. And I want to be healthy when I get there so I can work on it. And so, even if you don't have the land right now, I would encourage you to, look at what I'm doing. Maybe isn't the best path, but I'm doing it's a loan thing. So I have the land, it's mine. I could go build on it if I wanted, but I still have to pay off the loan. Which for me, I think it was the best course of action because I just don't see a way where I'm going to be able to save up 50 grand. Maybe I don't want to rule it out. Don't want to rule it out. Universe, if you want to bless me, bless me. But that was my path. And, that might be your path. For some people, go start now. Start making payments on land that you'll move to in 5 to 10 years. So that's one thing. Another thing is I saw, someone make a comment about bartering. Not everybody wants the responsibility of being a landowner, but a lot of people want the freedom of a little space. And so like you were saying, you might have a homestead, some property, some acreage. You could have a few guest houses and people could trade labor. So you have to ask yourself, do you want to be a landowner or do you want to be maybe just a community contributor? So that's something for individuals to ask themselves. I personally, I want to be a landowner. I have a lot of, I'm a bit OCD. I like my space and I like being able to control my little environment to my liking. But I also can collaborate with people. So I do hope that, my neighbors are cool and I can build a good relationship with them. And, I'm hoping to also, build a cabin for someone who wants to trade some labor and live on my land because I want community. And so so that's what I would encourage you to do. The last thing or two I would recommend is start learning now about farming, about animal husbandry, about water maintenance on your land, the way it sheds, about wells. There's so much that goes. If you don't have a background, like a country background, it's going to be a lot for you to learn. And so the more that you can learn now, the better. I have a little bit of a country background, but not enough that I need. And so, every day I'm trying to learn something new about, what season to start growing what plants, about how to build a greenhouse. I'm learning now. So when I do get the land paid off and I do get down there, I'm ready to go and I'm ready to work. And so that's another theme is that a lot of us are, working on our 3 to 5 year plans. Not a lot of us have the land now. Some of us do, which is cool, but a lot of us are, we're a few years out. And to the people that do have the land, I love how many of them are making YouTube videos and how many YouTube channels there are that are DIY that help you, build things and how to dig wells. And there's so much information out there. So I'd recommend checking out YouTube University while you can. I bet you in the next 3 to 5 years, the homestead channels will also be pretty freaking censored. So I'm not tech savvy. I need to get better at that. I know you can save YouTube videos and archive, and I need to do that. So learn while you can.
Yeah, and it's funny, like there's you and I for construction. Joy Child's husband Ben is very handy as well. Lee is one of the best people I've ever met to discuss horticulture and natural plant medicine. Like there is a group of people that are gathering together that I think are going to be I keep using the word fundamental and it's not the one I'm looking for, but very, very important in what's about to develop. Like Lee himself has journals and journals of tips of horticulture, and he's been doing this for most of his life. You know, this is the guy who lives on a dirt road and will give away fruits and vegetables to his neighbors just because he's a good guy, right? This is the guy who has helped people with plant medicine who have chronic pain, me included. You know, little known fact, I had a motorcycle accident, had my knee replaced. I'm supposed to be on a handful of pharmaceuticals all the time, and I'm not because he's offered me pain relief in another manner. And that is a beautiful thing because a lot of those pharmaceuticals were keeping my mind very, very clouded. Um, and I just want to touch on the one thing I wrote it down as you were saying it. The whole livestock thing for the uninitiated is going to be a bit of culture shock. I myself grew up the smell alone. I grew up in an area that where the fields were fertilized every spring, and that's why I'm so good at my job because that smell does not bother me because I grew up with it. Now I see grown ass men every time I pull my truck and go, like they're in grade 3 and somebody farted. It's like, holy shit, it's just a truck, grow the fuck up. But you're not going to be okay when you have to shovel poop so you can grow your vegetables. If you think my truck smells, you haven't seen shit yet, literally, because you don't know what it takes to actually grow food because that's part of it is that smell. uh,
I actually like the manure smell, the fertilizer manure smell. I kind of like it. I know that's weird.
I no, I there there's a sweetness to actual manure, and we're going way off top. But like I knew it was springtime, and it always made me happy because summer was next. And it's like, oh, that means in like 2 months I'm going to be able to ride my bike for like a week at a time. This is going to be great, right? And that was it. Um, but um, in our last show, you mentioned finding like-minded people. What practical strategies have worked for you or others to build genuine community without turning it into an echo chamber? Like even with my show, I noticed like there's a certain group of people that get it, but they're always the same ones in the chat. And I absolutely love you guys for showing up week after week. And then I'll show it to a stranger, they're like, "Oh my god, that's an amazing show," and then they'll never watch it again, and it's like, "Okay, so I'm in that echo chamber now, I get it." Like, I'm in the middle of a room screaming, and everybody's got their ears plugged again, and it's like, there's, like, 6 people that listen to me, and I'm under exaggerating, but you know what I mean? Like, it is hard to get people to really get involved and not end up in an echo chamber.
You're entirely correct. And I on my notes, I have just I wrote I don't know because I struggle with that so much. I live in Seattle, and the people here are just fucking insane. And you know, I've come a long way because I used to be way more like aggressive about that, but I still have some progress to make because ultimately I'd like to be able to just be like compassionate towards them in like a Jesus like way. So I still have growth to do, but I've made progress because I'm less. I'd use other words, but fucking insane works for now. And it's been a struggle of mine because you mentioned the anarchist metaphysical community. I very much believe, anarchism is the answer. It's the best solution for society. It encourages decentralization, which is what we need. You had mentioned the earlier centralization of us into cities has been one of the worst things for humanity ever. And unfortunately, oh man, see, this is, I don't even feel comfortable here. To be honest, I can't be my full self around most people, and I hate that feeling because I'm not being honest and I'm not being authentic. But it's just I can't. There are certain parts of town where I actually would not feel safe being my full honest self, and that sounds ironic because Seattle's the city of safe spaces. But that being said, we still have to try. And for me personally, I have a huge, and I would encourage you maybe to explore this in your own capacity as well, but a desire to tackle the biggest dialectic that I feel divides us right now in society, because I believe the culture wars and everything can be traced back to this dialectic, and that is the capitalism versus communism dialectic. And even that, I believe, isn't like we're not going to when we win that battle, it's not going to be that capitalism wins. It's going to be that a final greater, not even final, but the next synthesis will emerge, because that's the whole fucking point of the dialectical process, is to develop a greater synthesis. And right now we are just stuck arguing these two ideas that not even the right ideas necessarily we should be arguing. But at the core, for me personally, that's what I would love to, have a weekly or a monthly show talking to people I disagree with. But I can't find those people to actually engage. I'm still trying, and I think for you it would help because you would quite literally be breaking your echo chamber, and you would be getting exposure to more people. And ultimately, I know exposure is not the goal, but it's still nice. It still feels good. It feels like you're actually making progress. You're making a difference. So I get where you're coming from. And that's what I'm going to continue to try to do, is find people who want to engage in that high level conversation. And I know most people are going to find it boring. I think if I ever got like 200 likes on a conversation, discussing capitalism for communism, to me, that would be like a fucking dream come true. Most people want like 1 million likes or whatever. No, man, give me 200 likes and I would be happy. I would feel like I'd be making a difference. I see, I don't even know, like, I don't even want to defend capitalism so much as I want to defend the free exchange of goods and services, which is what capitalism kind of is. But I don't want to defend capitalism, but I also, think communism is horrible. And, I don't want to be that guy that just shits on communism, but we're still there. Like, our society is still stuck on this conversation. And I think it's really important. Do you care about that, like the communism versus capitalism thing? And do you see the connections to all the culture war stuff?
Oh, absolutely. And like it's there's a weird balance to it that I can understand. And I do think I don't think either one of them are right either. Like I do think there's somewhere in the middle that it's community. And that's the only English word I can keep going back to for this idea is like we're not supposed to be dictated to in the sense that the government controls everything, but I also think that we're all entitled to the exact same thing, if that makes sense. Because I do believe that we all came here for the same reason to try to make this a better place. Just a lot of society has lost sight of that and has gotten into the consumerism of capitalism, and that's all they know now. Whereas communism is like I've went to Cuba a couple of times and I've seen communism firsthand, and you know on the outside it looks like it works, and then when you realize the guy serving you drinks is actually a dentist, it's like, oh, why are you serving drinks? He's like, because I make better money here. And I'm like, what? You're an educated man and you're here part-timing slinging drinks. What? And he's like, yeah, this is the way our government works here. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't like that one either. And I can actually share a shorter another story about experiencing communism firsthand that absolutely blew my mind. The guy that was a lifeguard, because there's the ocean, but of course you have to have a pool in a resort, right? Because why not? But the lifeguard and I were shooting the shit, and I had traded him a Punisher shirt I had for something he had. It was Cuban cigars because I smoked at the time, and he's like, looks at me and goes, "You like my shoes?" I'm like, "Yeah, those are really cool, Nike. Hey, I didn't know you guys could get those over here." And he looks at me, he's like, "I saved for 2 years for these shoes." What? 2 years of tips just to have shoes. My family goes without, and I'm like, what? He had to save every penny for 2 years outside of what the government gave him to buy shoes. And I was like, okay, yeah, I don't want to do this either. Like communism to some people seems like a really good idea because it's like, yeah, okay, everybody has a fair share and the government control. No, it's a pretty fucked up system when you're actually standing beside somebody who has to live in it and had to save up for 2 years to get a new pair of shoes. I can even go further with that. The hurricanes had hit just before we got there, and they were rebuilding parts of the resort. And me being the construction guy, I'm there checking it out, looking at all the shit and how they're building stuff because you never know when you're going to pick something up. And I see this guy and he's got hard hat on and flip flops, and I'm like, aren't you worried about your feet? He's like, things cost money here. I'm like, okay, but you need work boots. He's like, got 2 feet, only got one head. He spent his money on a hard hat instead of boots because he wanted to protect his head. And I'm like, holy shit, those are the choices. Like, I even take my PPE at work for granted that it's just going to be there because that's part of my goddamn job. This guy is like, no boots and like big chunks of lumber that could break his toes like that. And I'm like, this is a crazy system too. So to answer your question in a very long-winded fashion, I really don't know, but there has to be somewhere in the middle where we're in control and everybody has everything they need.
Yeah, I mean, I I get a little hesitant around, giving people what they need because there's so much subjectivity there. But that's where the deeper granular conversation that most people might find boring, but that's where we could unpack it further. I won't bore your audience with wanting to unpack that, but absolutely, like, because this whole episode has almost been talking about community, right? And it's in the fucking word communism, in the root, right? So like we are men who care about those around us, but we also understand that it's not going to come from a bureaucratic system that is just another recreation of the state, in essence. And so there's good, maybe ideas in communism, and we should take care of people. Absolutely, I'm not going to argue that. But then there's also good ideas in capitalism where it's like we should let people own land and livestock, and we should let them trade because that's going to motivate them to provide a quality product to their neighbor and to themselves. And so there is a synthesis. And then, like I had said, all of the culture war roads, in my opinion, kind of lead back to this dialectic. I won't go too far, but I will say, because the ruling class, I call them the ruling class, the elites, the aristocracy, there's a lot of terms for it, but they perpetuate that division because then it allows them to consolidate power and resources like they have been doing. Like, they've divided us, they've made it easier. I was talking shit about Seattle earlier, but right now, Washington State just passed an income tax. We already have a sales tax. We already have like the second highest cost of living. What we're going to see is, in the next 5 to 10 years, Seattle's going to just, people are going to flood out. values are going to drop, and then hedge funds are going to come in and buy up a bunch of this shit. And then the hedge funds and the corporations and the stock people, they're all going to win, and we're all going to lose. And so that's just what they do, is they use policy in different areas and in different ways to benefit them. Because yeah, they're going to win. The working class is going to get fucked over the next 5 to 10 years in Washington state, and the hedge funds are going to win. And that's all that they do. And so when I say I don't want to defend capitalism necessarily, because that's how they do it. They use a very finite style of capital, money, fake money, fiat money. I'm sure you've had guests, sorry, the money system, which is another farce. I don't want to get too far into that, but they use the fake money to move things around and to fuck us in the working class. And it just, it hurts my heart and my soul. And I wish people weren't so divided, but then there's the whole culture wars that they do, and they're fucking good at it. And it's frustrating because you can't even have a conversation anymore. You just can't talk to people about anything anymore.
No. On the uptick about Seattle, this is actually from Joychild. She mentioned this in a text earlier, and I'll hook you up with this after. But there is actually he's a metaphysical and spiritualist that actually has a men's group in the Seattle area that you might be interested in looking into, and I'll get you that after the show. But she was listening at home and knew of somebody in your area who might be a good jumping off point for you to get that local community that you're seeking, because it's apparently people of the same mindset that you and I have. So
hook me up, because that would blow my mind to meet someone like us in Seattle.
Yeah. I wrote this question weird, so I'm going to rephrase it as I'm reading it. What would you tell somebody living in an apartment, like a city apartment, that still wants to participate in meaningful land-based or rural community vision?
Yeah, so micro gardens are really becoming popular right now. You could, in your kitchen, in your living room, they have various styles that you can do, like little pot, like there's this thing, it looks like a giant vase that's got little pods coming out. But yeah, so start with maybe a micro garden, start there. Maybe turn one of your closets into a pot growing room. It's kind of joking, but kind of serious. Speaking of growing things, but then also, one thing that does exist here in Seattle, I will give credit for, there are community gardens. And so if you're in a city that has a community garden, it's usually pretty cheap to join, like $5, and then you have to make various commitments. But those are really cool too. But then I also saw recently a video of someone engaging in, what did he call it? Like guerrilla urbanization. So without any approval from the city, you just go and make improvements to your city. So like they put a bench at a bus stop, because there was a bus stop that didn't have a bench. They didn't ask for permission. They just did it. And there's such a deeper message to that, where, stop waiting for permission and just fucking do it. If you see something wrong in your neighborhood, just fucking fix it. There used to be a legacy of men, and women too, but I'm a single guy, and I want my journey somewhat to speak to men who are struggling. There used to be a legacy of men who would just see something and do something about it. Oh, the old folk Johnson's fence is broken, and they're 80 years old and can't fix it. We're just going to go fix it Saturday morning. Stuff like that. So even in cities, there's a need. There's need everywhere if you look. And so, and then ask yourself, how much longer do you want to live in a city? Have you built a plan, an escape plan yet, or are you locked in for the long haul? If you're watching this, you're probably not wanting to live in a city forever. So if you don't already have a 5-year plan, I would recommend starting to build one. And I can tell you from my own journey, the fake plague really messed me up. And there was a point where I literally, my vision was so clouded I could not look to tomorrow, and I lost sight of my 5 year plan. And I just got lost. A lot of us did. It's part of the journey. But one thing that I have found motivating and encouraging is the redevelopment of a 5 year plan, a new 5 year plan. So for as much as I've been shitting on Seattle, I can tell you my 3 to 5 year plan is to get the fuck out. So like I had mentioned earlier, I'm making payments on my land and I want to have it paid off in ideally 3 years, but it might take 5. I'll find the money. What's your expression? Fuck it, I'll find the money. Or
Yeah, fuck it, I'll get more.
Yeah, fuck it, I'll get more, and I'll pay off the land. So that's what I would really encourage. And if you don't want to be a landowner, but you want to live on land, like I was saying, start asking yourself, what tasks could you offer in exchange for housing? I have a hope that in the future, it's not going to be a crazy amount of commitment that people are going to need to make for housing. So, for example, it used to be like you'd work 20 hours a week just for your room and board, and then you'd have to work another job, for your food and other things like that, right? But like 20 hours a week, that's half of your working week just for room and board. It should not be that much. So what I hope is that it's like 5 to 10 hours a week. Even 10 seems like a lot, but like 5, 6, 7, maybe an hour a day, you do something. You feed the chickens, you collect the eggs, you do a little bit of this, like that's what I think is fair, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And you've got Lee kind of riled up here in the chat. You don't need land at all, buddy. Just go far into the wilderness and set up your homestead. No money, no taxes. We've actually talked about this because there's a lot of places in rural Canada that you could just fuck off and nobody would find you. And, he followed that up with take your land, buddy, because that is another, and that's something a lot of people are doing, is just selling everything and fucking off. And it's going to happen more and more, I honestly think, because a lot of people are seeing what this really is, and it's like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah, the America, they have the BLM land, they call it, not the Black Lives Matter, but the Bureau of Land Management. There's like a lot of, you have a lot of freedom. I don't think you can build structures. People do. But this kind of, I know we're kind of going a little long. Thank you. I was just thinking, I believe AI and drones are going to make that very difficult to do. Very soon, property lines are going to be very, very, very enforced, which leads to another, anarchist question that it would be fun to unpack at a later date, is this idea of, I call it the initial accounting. How do we account for like all of the land, and how do we divide it all up, and how do we let people, like, if the government if a, God forbid, if a bomb dropped on a certain city in the country and a lot of our politicians disappeared, I'm not advocating someone do that, but if it happened and our government collapsed, what is the most moral and ethical way we can begin to divvy up land? Because people are going to be greedy. So how do we deal with the greedy people? But like at the same time, like people deserve land, like you were saying, so that's a really random question that we don't have to get into today, but something to think about.
I initially would go back to the days of old, and again, not encouraging this by any means, but do a little bit of reading about a few generations ago, how politicians were held far more accountable for their words and actions and what they promised and what they told people they were provided. And if they didn't, they were dragged out of their houses in the middle of the night, tarred and fucking feathered for being of disservice and being a lying, corrupt piece of shit like Marxist Carney here in Canada. And honestly, dude was never even elect. Dude was never even elected. He was placed, and now there's a bunch of fuckwits crossing the floor. I don't pay attention to politics, but I can smell a rat, and I smell a whole bunch of them. But that's neither here nor there. I do think that if it ever did go down and fall apart, we definitely need to be the ones to implement a system of responsibility and taking ownership of your promises and actions, and the next group of people that we empower to have the decision making power in the next version of our society.
I like that how you framed it as we're sort of a bridge. Uh, I like that a lot. You know, those of us who have gone through the adversity to do the work to become just like these people who aspire to be aware and awakened. Uh, you know, it's yeah, it is our duty. That's part of the mission I talked about earlier. We did come here for some fucking work, so let's go.
Uh, Lee had to throw something in that Trump said would stop the bomb. I fucking love you, Lee. Don't
Oh
make
man, yeah, that's this has been so much worse than I thought it was gonna be. I yeah. I mean, I don't think Kamala would have been any better, but like, yeah, this is just bad. It's just the mask is fully off at this point for a lot of narratives. And now I like how, you know, some of the narratives we know exist, but we just don't even talk about them because it's like, so what?
yeah.
We're doing our own thing. We're unplugging from them. So yeah.
I think it was somebody on Steven's show once said, are most of the conspiracy theories and rabbit holes true? Yeah, probably, but it doesn't matter. That's a distraction too, right? Joy Child is right up on this one as well. She said self responsibility and self governance is what is needed and necessary. That's another idea too. And I actually got in trouble on social media when they were talking about the digital IDs. I said very facetiously in a post that that was a wonderful idea because then we could eliminate the needs for things like the House of Congress, Parliament, and even Capitol Hill. Because if that's a valid form of government identification for everybody, then everybody can have a say in what's being passed as law. I got told that that was anti-political sentiment or something. I basically take it down, or we're going to cancel your Facebook account. Is what I got told for saying that, but it's very, very true that, you know, there are ways for us to govern ourselves that we don't need. What's wrong with politics? Well, off the top of my head, I would say that the idea of town hall has gone the way of the dinosaur. And we won't even get into whether or not dinosaurs were real because that's a whole other fucking thing. But like town hall just disappeared. It's extinct. We used to meet and gather and vote and discuss, and now it's just a bunch of fuckwits who can leave the party they're in and go join another one, and nobody seems to blink and no longer represent the ideals that you voted for because nobody cares, right? The workaday guy doesn't care, doesn't have time to care. They've even distracted us from being able to be involved in what's going on in our own reality. And that's what's wrong with the political system. Just in a brief explanation of my own, is we need to have more say, and they've taken it away from us.
Yeah, the corruption has literally permeated every level of government down to your freaking municipal water treatment facilities. There's so much corruption in every level and layer of government. And that's why if you do buy land and you don't get it permits and you just don't include the government. Just go off grid. That's why it's so important. But also, that's why it's important to maybe get into politics. Also, another thing, I hate politics, but if I would have to run for like county commissioner just to make sure property taxes don't go up, I'd do it. I'd run, just be like, I'm not touching your property taxes. I'm going to get rid of as much government as I can. I want you to just go fucking do your thing. We might have to do that too, but we'll cross
I,
that bridge when we get there.
I'd vote for Drew, so that's what I'll say. Um, Before we go, I do want to ask this one because I think it's a good one. What lessons from historical or existing communities like the Amish, eco villages, or old labor mutual aid societies should modern people learn to use and adapt?
Ooh, I know that every community has issues, and so like the Amish community, there are issues within it as well, but we can highlight how collaborative they are. They Oh my gosh, if you get bored, YouTube like Amish building, and you can see them put up a structure in less than a day. They'll build a full fucking barn in like a day. They're
And then
so
carry it.
Yeah. And a lot of homestead community pages that I follow, they recommend that you actually build a relationship with your local Amish community because they often provide superior products, and they're good to trade with. Overall, I hear good positive things about them. But there are some sort of culty elements. Unfortunately, it's a dogmatic approach. But there's the expression, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's why we like Buddhism. That's why we like Jesus. That's why we like, all kinds of faiths and spiritualities, because there's value in all of them. And so it's look at the good that they can offer. So the collaboration, I think the faith element, again, of trying not to be dogmatic, but I just call it the universe. Having this faith in a transcendent idea or a transcendent concept, something beyond me. That's another thing that the Amish do that I think has been very successful. As far as the earlier mutual aid societies, I think that was sort of revolutionary. This idea that people were at a place where they had enough to actually help others. Because for so long, humans have just been controlled and manipulated to just have enough, to just have enough. Or as soon as they get a little bit more, the state says, oh, what? What? You have a little more? No, that's mine. And so the earlier mutual aid societies and efforts, that was sort of like the first round, and it was they broke the ground, and now it's sort of our responsibility to continue the tradition and to grow it and to evolve it. And in a weird way, we have less than they do and more than they do, because technology, we have air conditioning, right? But we're trading certain comforts for uh, uh, less actual existence. I didn't word that as well as I wanted, but with inflation, what I'm trying to say, and the cost of living, yeah, sure, we kind of have nice things, but we don't have access to meaningful things. There we go. So comfortable things, they're kind of cool, but meaningful things are way more fulfilling. And those are things that come from community and from helping others and from having, just wonderful moments with friends and family, having a connection with nature, all the things that we have taken for granted. For me personally, it feels like it kind of started around 2012. The division started, and then 2016 it hit another sort of gear, and then in 2020 it hit another gear, and it feels like it's hitting another gear right now. But the difference is we're actually like, we're jumping off the car, or we're jumping out of the boat or whatever. We're just not playing the game anymore. And so we have an opportunity and an obligation to, I don't want to say rewrite, but to sort of define what mutual aid can look like and should look like. Because the only really good example I can think of that I like is the Humane Society, because they're mostly have been a not government funded operation, though they do get some government funds. Um, but that's one of the only examples that I can think of true just people coming together and helping. There are various nonprofits and whatnot, but a lot of them are just shell companies and money laundering programs. And so I don't have a good answer for that question. I'm sorry. I think there's so much more to be written on mutual aid, and it's going to be written through our acts and works of service. So it's kind of like we got to go do it.
I am absolutely in agreement with that, and I think that's one of the things is like I've figured out over the last couple of years the ways to navigate this reality best are almost developing. Voodoo as a religion is basically considered taking bits and pieces of different religions and making it one thing, and that's the collaboration known as voodoo. And I think that's a very, I'm not saying practice voodoo by any means. This isn't where I'm going with that. I'm saying the idea of like this from this works, this from this works, this from this works, and this from this works, all works together and it makes a really good system. I think that's how we're going to figure it out. And it's all about conversations like this, comparing notes, discussing our successes and failures, being able to be honest with each other. Like, look, this is where I fucked up and this is where I made it big. And it's not until you're honest with yourself and other people about your trials and tribulations and the ways you want to go that anything is actually going to happen as a group, because like we're all just sitting there telling each other, for the most part, I'm not saying everybody, you and I have had a very honest conversation, but a lot of people are still telling each other what they think the other one wants to hear, and that's not what they need to hear. They need to hear the reality of the situation of each other's lives, because we're all here to teach each other in some manner or another. Like I've learned how to grow weed from Lee. I've learned different things about construction from this guy, or cooking from this guy, or whatever. And it's made me a very, very useful being in this reality, because like not only can I build you a house, I can cook you fucking supper in it. Right. That's where we all need to share our skills, share our knowledge, share the abilities, not just in the barter system, the energetic exchange, but in the actual teaching each other of the skills that we need to develop these lifestyles that we're trying to achieve, right? Because we're taught a very base set of skills in the educational system that are just basically enough to get you by, to live, die, and pay taxes. And if you want to be self-sustaining, you need to start thinking outside of what you were taught in the classroom is the best way I can possibly word what I'm trying to say here is learn from each other, experience each other, take each other's advice. And if it doesn't resonate, great, throw it away. It's not for you. But if it makes sense and it helps you with a challenge or a trial that you're having, maybe try it somebody else's way instead of what you have stuck in your head from what you've been taught.
I I have already learned so much from people like you and from Steven, and I'm excited to learn more. And uh, that was a um, that was great. Thank you very much. This conversation has been fantastic. I really didn't. I feel like I did a very poor job, but I
Oh,
am. But I'm also just owning like my like I'm just mentally not all there, and I'm being vulnerable. So anybody that saw this, thank you very much for supporting Dawn and for listening to me ramble. And hopefully, something I said, sparked something within you. If it did, leave a comment under this video, because I'd love to interact with you all. I'm a lonely guy, and so just looking for some community.
Drew, I don't think you did terribly at all. I think you absolutely nailed it. You were on point with your answers. And you know what? Sometimes when it feels like we're rambling is when the most pure information comes from wherever it comes from. And those free streaming thoughts are exactly what people need to hear. And that's what you've done tonight. Like, I think there's Lee. You did great, buddy. Like, you absolutely nailed it. And the chat was like 90% about what you're, of course there's always people fucking around in my chat because I encourage to try and make me laugh during the show because I have ADD and my squirrels take over. But the large majority of it was people saying, no, he's right. Yeah, this, yeah, that. So no, you were on point, and what you were saying was resonating with people. Um, where can people reach out to you, and what's your channel? Because this is going to be on audio too. You guys can see it here, but where else can they reach you?
Um, oof. I kind of have an Instagram. No Division. I don't do a lot of social media. It's a problem because I got to put myself out there. So No Division is my YouTube channel. I also do some merchandise, some shirts. Reach out to Don maybe if you want to connect. He'll give you my email or Facebook. My name Andrew Lauridsen. Um, uh, yeah, I got to get better at putting myself out there. That's all I got right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. And I will absolutely refer anybody that wants to get a hold of you. As I said, Joy Child already wants to talk to you. And Lee says you should come to Canada. Uh, as I said before the show. But again, maybe after Marxist leaves. Um, because
Yeah, y'all are in for trouble.
yeah, he's kind of batshit, but we're not going to go into that. Um, but like I always say, I want to thank everybody who was in the chat and that listens to this in the future, and I want to thank everybody that participated because you guys are funny and make me laugh and had some very very valid points. And like I always say, if you can, please do go outside because it's a lot better than sitting in front of the screen. And I love you guys.